We go from, I need my other map again. Actually, I probably should draw the whole map out first and then refer to it. Let's do it that way. So when we go from 538 right here, and we go from that to 487 right here. So this time period right here, okay, that time period there that I'm writing in pink, from here to here, that's 49 years. And we know the temple was completed being built in 516, but 49 years after that would bring us to 487. Now there's nothing significant that happens on the calendar in 487. It's just 487. I spent a lot of time, the reason this lesson is going to be short is because I spent a lot of time trying to research this and trying to figure out how all these, and a lot of different preachers have a whole lot of different ideas of how these fit together, and I have no idea. So I'm just coming up with something simple here because I have no idea, and I didn't get anything else from the Lord. Let's finish writing out this timeline and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so the next thing we want to put on this timeline is we want to write the time 458 BC. So we're back on the back of page 6. And this is when Ezra brings 2,000 captives, or 2,000 people from Babylon back to Jerusalem. 2,000 Jews back to Jerusalem. So even though the temple was being rebuilt, what we have between this period of time here, and it finished being rebuilt in about 516. So it took, how many years is that? 38 to 18, about 20 years, not quite 20 years, to have that rebuilt. Oh no, I guess it was 22 years. So it took about 22 years to rebuild the temple. When Ezra comes back, he starts to work on the wall. And between this time period here, the people, even though they were back in the land, they didn't really worship God. They quit working on the city of Jerusalem. They all went home and were building their own houses and furnishing them and fixing them up and remodeling their houses. And they really lost their fervor for worshiping God. So Ezra comes in 458 BC, renews their interest in following God and their law, and brings 2,000 more people with him. Then we get to the timeline of 444 BC. And this is where Nehemiah comes in. And Nehemiah makes 2 trips to Jerusalem. And he, even though he's just a layman, he's working under King Artaxerxes, the 3rd king in the Medo-Persian Empire. Even though he's a cupbearer under Artaxerxes, when he asks to go back, he goes one time and he helps renew again, the people had fallen back. So between 58 and 44, so about 15 years, not that 10, 13 years. 14 years, not that many years, the people again fall back into idolatry and not worshiping God, or just not obeying his laws, not going through the rituals. So he comes back to Jerusalem and he renews the fervor and the glory of God, and the people get excited about worshiping God again. And then he goes back and comes back again 12 years later. And I've got to read a little something for you what Nehemiah said when he came back 12 years later. Now here, he's just in the land of Babylonia, serving under King Xerxes, and he had to go back to serving the king. The king let him leave for a little while. But when he went back 12 years later, after 12 years, Nehemiah returned to find the walls strong, but the people weak. Oh, that's right. Ezra and Nehemiah helped build the walls around the city. So they completed the temple at this point, and then they built the walls around the city at this point. So Nehemiah comes back 12 years later. The walls are strong, but the people are weak. He set about the task of teaching the people morality and he didn't mince words. And this is what he says to the people. This is in quotes. This is from extra biblical texts. I think. I argued with those people, put curses on them, hit some of them, and pulled out their hair. He reestablishes true worship through prayer by encouraging the people to revival, by reading and adhering to the Word of God. So it's not enough to know who God is, but you've got to walk with God. And the only way you walk with him is by reading his Word and then obeying it. So Nehemiah was so mad when he went back that he gets so mad at people. He walks up to them and he's probably shaking them and ends up pulling out their hair. I thought it was kind of funny. He was so passionate for the people of Jerusalem to follow and love God that he actually gets a little physical with them all. Okay, then we've got, I want you to mark this on your timeline. Then we've got the date. Yes. Pardon? Baptist preacher. Then we've got the date. I want you to mark 402 on your timeline. And that's, nothing significant happens at this point either. And then, according to a lot of study texts that I was reading and a lot on the internet, a lot of the texts seem to say that Jesus was born in 4 BC. Okay, he really wasn't born at time 0. They messed around with the calendar, so they're not really exactly sure, because somewhere in the Median Persian Empire over here, they messed around with the calendar, so the dates are a little off. We know from the book of Luke, Luke says that Jesus was about 30 years old when he started his ministry. So in order for him to be 30 years old when he started his ministry, he would have, they say he would have, and they lined that up with who was king at the time and who was king when he died. When they lined that up, they figured that Jesus must have been born at 4 BC rather than 0 BC. And then Jesus' crucifixion happens over here at about 30 AD rather than what we've always been taught, 33 AD, because we know that Jesus was 30 years old when he started his ministry, and then 3 years after that, three and a half years, he was crucified. So so as we're looking at this, what we want to point out here, if you take these numbers from 444 BC, 402 BC to 30 AD. So if you take and you look at this timeline, what you get over here, 402. From this timeline, you get 434 years. So these are odd numbers. So we're just going to put these up here for now, and then let's talk about them. So go back to your page 2. Know and understand that Daniel 9:25. Know and understand this. From the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, King Cyrus gave the first decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. And until the anointed one, the ruler, comes. Who's the anointed one? Jesus Christ. And he's the ruler, the true ruler of the earth. There will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. When you multiply 62 times 7, what do you get? 434. 62 times 7. If anybody has a calculator, or do it on your side there. Okay, you get 434. So in Daniel, it's telling, understand this, there's going to be a set of time that's 7 sevens and 62 sevens. And we know that Cyrus, the Persian king, sent money and food and supplies and whatever, and whoever wanted to go back to Jerusalem to leave Babylon and go back and rebuild it in 538 BC. Then Darius, the Mede, the Persian king, he sent exiles back again in 520 BC. So over here we have some more exiles. And then Artaxerxes sent 2 sets of supplies back. One in 457 or 458. Is when King Xerxes sent some back, and then again in 444, King Artaxerxes sent supplies back to rebuild Jerusalem. And that was when Nehemiah came. Okay, page 3 on your notes. Okay, and until the anointed one, the ruler, comes, we established that was somewhere around 27 AD that Jesus is baptized and gives his earthly ministry. Then that's based on him being born in about 4 BC. Okay, so about 27 to 30 AD, Jesus has his ministry. So there's 7 sevens and 62 sevens, and I've got that on page 3 where you can see that. 7 times 7 is 49 years. 62 times 7 is 43 years. And Jesus tells us the city's going to be rebuilt with streets and a trench, so that happens in this period of time, but there will be times of trouble. If you go back to the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, you'll read about all the trouble that they had. I hope I'm not putting you to sleep with all this detail. Okay, then Daniel 9:26. Ginny, page 3 of your notes.
After the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be cut off and will have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed.
Okay, this one is, and I want to go through this slowly because this verse is confusing, but this gives us some more information here. So after the 62 sevens, so this is the 62 sevens here, the anointed one will be cut off, right? He's killed. And then once Jesus is crucified, the 483 years, so if we take this 49 years here, let's go with pink. So if we take 49 years, and we take this one in purple, I've got it up here, the 443 years, or 34 years, a little dyslexia there. Okay, and we get 3, carry 1, 8, 483 years. So, exactly where the 7 sevens fall, we know that the end of the 62 sevens ends over here with Jesus' death. And so, we don't know exactly. A lot of people have a lot of different theories as to when this first set of 7 sevens is given. The reason they're probably broken up into 2 pieces is because it's listed. There are 7 sevens and there are 62 sevens. Or, 62 sevens. Let me put this up here. 62 times 7. And this one is 7 times 7. So because they're broken up, instead of just saying 69 sevens, there's going to be 69 sevens. Because they're broken up, they're 2 separate time pieces. And as of right now, we don't even, from everything I've read, nobody's got a clear connection as to how these dates fall. So we know the issuing of the decree began with Cyrus in 538, the first decree, but there was also a decree given in 458 and 444 by King Xerxes. And so some people have tried to figure something out from this date, but none of it really falls quite evenly, except if you start with 402, and there's nothing significant that we know of that happened in 402, but if you're taking 62/7 straight through, this is where you end up back at to get the 434 years. And the other thing I want to read here, and then point 2, let me read this. But there are still 7 years of curses. Okay, this is 483 years, but how many years of curses were the Israelites given to begin with? They were given 490 years of curses. So 490 years of curses, but so far only 483 years have been fulfilled. How many years does that leave us with? 7 years. And this is where the 7 years comes from. And because the Israelites were never back in their land, sovereign in their land, since Nebuchadnezzar took them away in 605 in the first dispersion, in the first carry away there as captives. So they were never sovereign in their land again. They did get back in their land with the first decree, but not all of them came back. And then right before Jesus was born, this time period is when we have the part of the Medo-Persian Empire and then the Greek under Alexander the Great. And then we've got the Roman Empire starting about 162 BC. So Jesus comes back, he's born in the land of Israel. But when he's in the land, the Israelites are poor. They're not real wealthy over there when Jesus is alive, right? The Israelites are pretty poor. And they're under the domination, during Jesus' time, they're under the domination of the Roman Empire. So let's read the other part of this verse, 9:26. So after 62 sevens, after the 62 sevens, the anointed one is going to be cut off. And then the next sentence in that verse says, the people of the ruler who will come. So let's focus on the ruler who will come, will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Who was the ruler who destroyed Jerusalem and the sanctuary and the temple? Oh, we talked about the Medes and Persians, then the Greeks, and then who was in charge when the temple was destroyed? Romans were in charge. Yeah, the Romans were in charge. So the ruler who will come, there's going to be a ruler that comes in the future. Daniel's saying there's going to be a ruler who will come that will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And we know in 70 AD, the city and the sanctuary are destroyed by the Romans. Okay? So the Romans, Romans destroy, S-T-R-O-Y, Jerusalem and the temple. They burn it to the ground so that not one stone is left on another in 70 AD. Okay? So this verse is telling us the ruler who will come in the future. And here we see the multidimensional timeline. The ruler who comes and destroys this city and the sanctuary. And Titus is the ruler, that the general who's in charge of the Roman soldiers that actually destroy the city and the temple. And he later becomes a Caesar. And then the rest, let's pull the rest of that phrase in. It says, the people of the ruler who will come. So who are the people that destroyed the city and the sanctuary? The Romans. The Romans destroyed the city and the sanctuary. So the ruler of that people, and that means the Romans. And today, if we look on a map of what the Romans were in charge of back when the city was destroyed, we're looking, and I'm on page 4 of your notes on the back there, all of present-day Europe, Turkey, Northern Africa, the northern part, all the nations on the northern part of Africa along the Mediterranean Sea, Iran, Iraq, and parts of Slavic areas in Russia. So that's all the land that the Romans owned during the time that the temple was destroyed. So he's saying, Daniel's telling us that the people that are the ruler who's going to come in the end times, that ruler will be a descendant of the people who destroyed the city and the sanctuary. So the Antichrist is going to arise from somewhere that the ancient Roman Empire occupied. So the Antichrist is going to rise somewhere from either the northern parts of Africa, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Europe, and as an offshoot of Europe is America. Okay? So the ruler will come is a future generation of the descendants from the Roman Empire. The Antichrist will arise from one of the nations that are descendants of what comprised the Roman Empire in 70 AD. This passage is multidimensional in time and space. It first of all refers to 70 AD. It also refers to the Antichrist during the tribulation. And the ruler will come from the people who destroyed the city and the sanctuary. So that's what that means. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the next part of that verse says, and the end will come like a flood. War will continue unto the end, and desolations have been decreed. The end refers to this age, the end of the age of grace. It will come like a flood, means that when the end is here, things will happen very quickly. Change and disaster will happen so fast you can hardly keep up with it. And we see that happening right now. if you look in what's going on in our government and in politics, I mean, the stuff that's happening in the last 3 months is happening so fast. You can't keep up with all the changes that's going on that they're trying to push through in our Congress and then through executive orders. So a lot of changes are happening right now. That gives us a little bit of a clue that that we're in the end times. Of course, we've got other clues, but that's another one coming from the book of Daniel. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed. That means that there's going to be continual war somewhere in the world. Natural disasters, famines, earthquakes, and plagues will take place through the end times, which we are living in the end times, and all the way through to the end of the tribulation. So Daniel, in his one verse here, Daniel 9:26, is talking about after the 62 sevens, so he's talking about a BC time, after the end of 62 sevens, the anointed one is going to be cut off, he's going to be killed, and then the people who destroy the city and the sanctuary, a ruler will come from among them, and when he comes, he is going to bring the end in like a flood. War will continue, and changes will happen very, very quickly once he gets into office. Okay, page 5 on your notes. Verse 9:27, Ginny, can you read that for us? Or did I have you read yet? Okay, then Christy.
Which one?
Page 5 on your notes, Daniel 9:27.
He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And on a wing of the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him.
Okay, so as we look at Daniel tells us that there's going to be 490 years of trouble and harm that's going to come to the people. And then when Jesus Christ is killed in 30 AD, they have completed 483 years of the 490. There's still 7 years left that the Jews have not fulfilled. Because when we read, turn back to your first page, page 1, where it says, I guess it's on page 2. Page 2, Daniel 9:24. Pat, can you, go ahead and keep writing, I'll read that. Page 2, Daniel 9:24. 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, put an end to sin, atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So in that one verse, Daniel 9:24, we are being told that they have to complete 490 years of punishment over the Jewish people. When Jesus, and in Daniel, and just in these 3 verses, we learned that when Jesus is crucified, they will have completed 483 of those years, but there's still yet 7 years left that we don't know where that goes on this timeline. But Daniel tells us in the verse we just read in 9:27, he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. He, a ruler that will come from the descendants of the people who destroyed the city and the temple, that he is going to make a peace contract with the Jewish leaders for 7 years. In the middle of that 7-year period, he's going to put an end to sacrifice and offering. So halfway through the tribulation, the Antichrist will stop allowing the Jewish priests to offer sacrifices to God, and will also stop worshiping God, worship. And on the wing of a temple, he's going to set up an abomination, and that's an image of himself to be worshipped as God, and that will cause desolation. And the desolation is this: anybody that refuses the mark of the beast and to worship the beast or his image is going to be put to death. So there's going to be a lot of people that realize the Antichrist is evil, and they will not want to take the mark, and they will be put to death until the end that is decreed is poured out on him, the Antichrist. And that's at the end of the tribulation, after Babylon is destroyed, after the Battle of Armageddon, the Antichrist armies are destroyed, and the Antichrist is taken and thrown into the lake of fire. And so these are the years. So that's where we get the 7 years from. Okay, so we get it from the book of Daniel, totally from the book of Daniel. And also from, we have to go and look at Leviticus about the 7 times 70. We look in the book of, in Jeremiah, where Jeremiah tells us, Jeremiah tells the people, you didn't listen to me, you provoked yourself. And so this country will become a wasteland for, and you'll serve in Babylon for 70 years. And then because they didn't return, they're given 7 times 7, 70, 7 times 70. And so they haven't served the 7 years yet. And they need to serve that yet to put an end to transgression, an end to sin, and to atone for the sin. And the sin was atoned for on the cross, so that part was fulfilled. But they still have to bring in everlasting righteousness. That's only going to come about when Jesus sets up his kingdom, and then after the millennial kingdom, and when all vision and prophecy is fulfilled. So Daniel's timeline covers what he says in these 3 verses, covers several, about 2,000-3,000 years worth is what we're looking at. And so that's where we get the 7 years. And also Daniel tells us in the middle of the 7, the Antichrist is going to break the covenant with the holy people, and he won't allow sacrifices, and he's going to declare himself God. So Daniel tells us that in the middle of the 7. Jesus tells us in Matthew, when you see the abomination that causes desolation, let the reader understand. So Jesus is telling us about that time. And so this is where we get the 7 years from the book of, because Jesus tells us in the book of Daniel, he's telling us, go back and look at the book of Daniel. You'll get the full picture when you look at the book of Daniel. You'll get why there's 7 years and not 3.5 years. Okay? So that's today's lesson.